Good afternoon, dear friends and colleagues. We're delighted to welcome you to IxD Capital's section on impact investment and sustainability for Digital Week Online. The moderators for this section are Eva Andriash, CEO and co-founder of IxD Capital, and me, Ekaterina Nasibulina, Business Development Manager for IxD Capital. Despite the uncertainty and great challenges of the present moment that we are all experiencing today, collectively, our team at IxD Capital remains 100% devoted to fostering an international impact community of leaders, innovators, top-tier investors, funds, as well as multilateral organizations, all with one purpose: to offer a fresh insight and a new perspective combined from the worlds of impact, business, and innovation. I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed speakers, each contributing directly to the creation of new regenerative economy and a more sustainable future for all of us. First, with the opening word, Her Royal Highness Queen Dayambi Kabatusula of the Bennett Chamber people of the Bakwa Indu, Central Kasai region, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Then our specialists and speakers, Artak Nolkanyan, Chief Operating Officer, UNDP SDG Innovative Finance, Shen Tang, founder and managing partner at Food Future Co., Jean-Philippe Duchevel, founder and managing partner at Bamboo Capital Partners, and Mamadou Toure, a founder at Africa 2.0 Foundation. And right now, we shall proceed to the opening word from Her Royal Highness Queen Dayambi.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much for having me today on this very distinguished, with this very distinguished panel, and to discuss such a very important topic, as development. I'm very honored and pleased to be here and to open this session for this afternoon. And of course, as I'm a traditional leader, I will always ask for blessing and for peace and prosperity, in the name of the Creator who of all things, and also to thank the ancestors who have come before us and did everything they had to do so that we can be manifested today in this form, and we can be here together to reflect and think about the future of humanity. Because when we talk about development, when we talk about investment, we're talking about really the future of humanity as a whole. So I'm very honored as a traditional ruler to be here. I'm also here representing the African descendants of Brazil, and I'm also myself, one of the founding members of the United African Diaspora, which is really a group of people who wants to make sure that the voice of the African diaspora is heard in the world. We are indeed about 350 million people on the planet outside of Africa who are descendants from Africa. So this is really an honor for me to be here. And talking about development, I was just here a few weeks ago at the CC Forum in Monaco to talk about investment in, sustainable economy. And it's interesting that now the topic of sustainability is coming full-fledged and full force into every circle that is talking about the future of this planet. When we talk about development, for me, oftentimes, when I look at my own people who are rural people in the Congo, who are farmers and live in very, pristine, rural areas where nature flourishes and prospers, and it's not altered by any pollution or anything like that, I really have to think about what really does it mean to be, developed. Oftentimes, unfortunately, when we talk about development, we are, compelled to think about the Western paradigm of development. And it can be at times for somebody like me and my people a bit frightening, because when we talk about development, we see, yes, indeed, the big cities and the big streets and roads and all this effervescence and abilities to reach to have our needs met in very efficient ways, and sometimes in surplus of what we really need. And it's all about productivity, profit, and generating profit and so so forth, and access to immense amount of resources. However, now we have come to a time where, there is an alarm that's been rung, which is to say, is it wise? So when we talk about development, and I can imagine Africa, I would like to imagine Africa to be developed indeed, but in what way? So I think that we have come to a crossroad where development can no longer just mean to have, to have material development, meaning just, building immense infrastructures and to do a lot of, production of goods and eventually services and to a never end. So meaning that we have to do it without thinking about the consequences. So today, more than ever, we have now to face consequences of the path for development that we have chosen, over the past three, phases of industrialization. This is the new era of industrialization. It's the digital era. So this is the fourth industrial revolution, we can say. So we have had three before. And with the three industrial revolution that we have had before, we are seeing now the consequences that are indeed, we have gained many good things, not to say that we didn't. However, we have also to deal with very, very difficult consequences that are now costing us to reflect on the model of development we chose. So my take is that we really have to start looking deeper into what is it that we want to accomplish. When we talk about development, is it just to perpetuate the system that we have and render it more efficient in the way that ideologically it's about, only increasing the profit and the return on investment? Or is it really about how can we create an environment in the earth where we live in peace with each other, and also we live in harmony with nature? And when I talk about harmony with nature, it's far from the romantic idea of just being roaming around the Garden of Eden, but it's really to be sensible to the effect that all our activities have on nature, and furthermore to what effect those effects will have on us and on all life on this planet. And therefore, to incorporate that dimension into all our avenues of saying we want to develop, these core ideas, these core demands have to be placed in the midst of our reflection when it comes to talk about development. Unfortunately, when I look at Africa today, I'm going to refer to Africa, but we can extrapolate to other places, is that when our leaders and when our people in entrepreneurs, they speak about development, there is oftentimes in their mind a template for development that really mirrors the Western development. So we imagine ourselves to have an Africa where we will have tall skyscrapers and roads, for never ending. And we will have access to all the electronics and all the, the technicity that we have in the Western world and in Asia, for instance. And we think of that as being, the place that we need to get, the Eden where we need to get. And I have to say, wait a minute. I have to say, how about Africa be a place where we start to think about alternative forms of development, where humanity is in the core of the idea to develop, but also we incorporate the element of the environment more now than we've had done it before. So not only when I say the human element is that the people's culture, the people's way, the people's aspiration of how they want to live together. Because again, when we template the model of development according to the Western paradigm, it takes away a lot of things that are actually, very inherent to our culture. For instance, when we talk about family values or family systems, when I look at my family in the Congo, it's really thousands of people. I mean, literally thousands of people, because we are all related to one another. We are from these clans and so forth. So the idea of a family is really always an extended family, is never this nuclear family. But opposed to that is that when you take a look at the Western system, or the Western idea behind development, has a lot to do with, individuality and individualism, as far as being the cell of production. Is the individual with the own personal capacity. It rarely encompasses like a cell that comprises many people and many members, like I would look at my family. So all these values are basically taken out, and they are out of the system that we look into when we want to calculate and copy a system of development. Yet again, we have, those values are very important. Today, more than ever, they have shown to be essential. Even in the Western world now, we are seeing, a resurgence of the need to reconnect people with people. I've seen a couple of pilot programs, for instance, in the Netherlands and I think in Germany, where they're now starting to build, buildings where they have different type of facilities to allow people to live almost in a community, although separate owners of different buildings, but then they want to mix the type of people that live there, so that they have elderly people living with younger people, living with people who have families of different ages, so that they can create a community, because they realize that living in community was a win-win for every individual in the community, because it's better for people who are elderly, even for their health, their morale, for the people who are younger, who are fighting still to make it in this world. They have some kind of assistance sometimes if they need help with the children. So all this fabric of the very society that we've had in our traditional cultures have been taken away in order to give way to this development and very self-centered, pursuit of, self, profit. So I think it's a good time to challenge these ideas when we talk about development, and particularly in Africa, to ask, that the ideas of development show that they come from an endogenous, perspective, and not from outside in, and that the outside in model can be revisited and can be challenged, because today we have many proofs that shows that the model had a lot of flaws, because no model that is in contradiction with the fact that nature, the primary source of all the resource we need to carry forth that so-called development, is not accounted for. It's not an element. It's not accounted for as a main variable, something that is there that we need to know that we have to replenish, because it's no longer just about sustaining, although we are just thinking about sustainability, but it's about regenerative economy. So we have to really go into understanding, I think, and incorporating different aspects of, how we can think, and this different aspect of culture, of different people, to really have a more eclectic and more rich model of what could be the alternative development models, rather than to have one way of thinking. Today, more than ever, I believe that it's time to go to the people and take a look at other practices of what developed, and so we can have better ideas of what development could look like. So all that to say, I want my people to have access to, things that, come to help them, fulfill the basic needs, like access to good, clean water, so they don't get, sick, access to good education. But what does that mean, good education? Is it an education that's only centered so that we can pursue and we can only sustain a particular model, or it's an education that's more open to include and more inclusive, to have other aspects of how we want to see our society develop in the future? Africa, I believe, has a lot to teach. And I think that it would be nice if we go to Africa with a different set of eyes and we start asking, what is it that we can gain from the way we organize ourselves in Africa? How is it important to see what is going to be the outcome if we change our models and we slightly modify it? Today, we have the avènement. We're talking about the digital week today. This is one of the reason why I'm here, is that yes, digital, digitalization is the next generation or the next big leap in industrialization. And how is it going to impact, the world, and specifically Africa for me, because Africa is really the one who has the least access to everything in the information technology, because we understand that even now, although we're talking about the world being connected, the percentage of people connected in Africa is really minute, and the rate, the data and all that, it's really very slow. The delivery of this the capacity for people to connect is very slow. We do have hubs in major cities like Nairobi or maybe Lagos or South Africa, but in majority of other countries we don't have such access. Majority of the people, when they say they have internet, is because they're using either a mobile phone or they having maybe some application like Facebook or WhatsApp, but that doesn't give them necessarily the ability with the rate of the data delivery to have access to university online or telemedicine or something. So there is still a big leap for many places in the world to be part of this industrial, in this new digital industrial era. It's because they still have to have infrastructures that would support such ability to join in with the digital revolution. And in many ways, I see it as a positive aspect, of course, because it will alleviate many different industries, and it will make it easy to access information and a lot of things. And I'm really specifically referring to something like telemedicine. And what I believe is that, yes, indeed, Africa has to be on board, and we have to really do a lot to help Africa get on board with the digital industrial era. However, it's always the question how and in what domain and why. And if it is to elevate the African people so that they can really have a mean to express their creativity, their ingenuity, and to profit also from the labor, then it's definitely a good thing. But if the inequality in the fact that Africa again is behind in accessing the digital world, then it would again maybe cause Africa to be again the victim of just very much predatory attitudes in terms of just going to Africa, using Africa as the next frontier where capitalism at its best can just go and take hold of whatever is left to be taken hold of. So I think that it's a good thing to have people like you get involved, but especially to have a dialogue that is an intracultural and extracultural dialogue where all people coming from all horizons are here together to reinforce the desire to make sure that when we do what we do it for the benefit of most, and we make it so that we have to encompass wisdom, not only intelligence, but wisdom, to ensure that we are going to be creating something that is in balance with the environment from which we profit, but needs us to care for so that it can regenerate itself. So my take and my last few words on this would be to say, thank you, because we have to be we have to take our duties as global citizens very seriously. And for that, I encourage you to get out of your comfort zone and to reach out to people who are different than you and ask of them, what is the idea of development and how does that look like? And to understand that people are different and the alternatives are maybe better for some, and alternative may be better for all if we want to incorporate different aspects of how to live together, because many different cultures have different propositions, and to incorporate them in the mainstream is sometimes a good thing. So my advice, my end for my talk is to continue the dialogue, continue opening up space to exchange, so that diversity will enrich our ability to reflect and our ability to come up with very, very creative solutions to the problem we have to deal with today. Thank you so much.
Your Royal Highness, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. I couldn't agree more that this unilateral focus on economy and profit has led us into a real stalemate, and the only way to move forward is to find this balance between community, environment, and economy, and it's only possible through dialogue and exchange of cultural perspectives. Thank you very much for coming here today and helping us explore this perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And now, after a lovely opening speech from Her Royal Highness, Queen Diamba, I'd like to proceed with the rest of the panel. As mentioned earlier, we are now definitely experienced that we can all agree on a time of great uncertainty and great challenges. However, needless to say, the times of great challenges also present great opportunities, and I think it's very useful for us to come together to explore these opportunities and new perspectives together, using the examples of actual applicable real-life projects in the sphere of impact investment and impact technology. So a couple of words on our structure and agenda today, as well as our speakers for today. Our section is dedicated to impact investment and technology and sustainability, and it is structured into two subsections. The first one on impact technologies and the second one on impact investments. Both sections will have two speakers presenting. So in no particular order, the first one, Artak Melkanyan, Chief Operating Officer for UNDP IxD Innovative Finance, presenting IxD Innovative Finance and UNDP Impact Ventures Accelerators, or IVA for short. And next, Shen Tang, founder and managing partner at Food Future Co., presenting his view on economy of wisdom and given the example of his own project in the food tech industry to illustrate that. And then for the impact investment section, we'll have Jean-Philippe Duchrevel, founder and managing partner at IxD Capital Partners, presenting IxD 500 initiative, a public-private partnership for acceleration the funding of the UN SDGs. And last but definitely not least, Mamadou Touré, founder at the Africa 2.0 Foundation, presenting Ubuntu philosophy and Ubuntu Tribe project, as well as how it can have greater social impact. So without further ado, I would like to kindly ask Artak to have the floor. To give a couple of quick introductory words to Artak's speech for this section, he's going to be presenting UNDP Impact Ventures Accelerators, or IVA for short, which is one of the practical approaches that exist today in order to help enterprises scale up effective business-based solutions to development issues. And in this new context, especially, as mentioned before, great challenges, great uncertainty, specifically COVID-19 related challenges. Artak, would you please have the floor now?
Yes, thank you very much. So I might need some sort of slides, so I'll share my screen basically to make the presentation more sort of illustrative. Do you see the slides?
Yes.
Great. First of all, I would start speaking about the Sustainable Development Goals, and this is which is basically the underlying concept behind what we are doing in terms of the impact technologies, right? So the SDGs came out about 5 years ago, and it represents a global vision in terms of the sustainable development. And the interesting thing about that is that we have both the developing and developed countries who has signed off behind those visionary global goals. And we have also an interesting situation when those goals are not only for developing, but also for developed countries. And the second interesting feature of that is there is quite an apparent understanding that those are achievable only when through the partnerships, especially the partnership with the private sector. So whenever we speak about the technologies, we look at the technologies which could be used in international development, but also more sort of sustainable ones, which are implementable through the involvement of the private sector. So again, when we try to combine these two things of impact in the context of sustainable development goals and involvement and engagement of the private sector in addressing the development goals, here we speak about those efforts, both entrepreneurial, technological, knowledge-wise, that we try to involve to address and to meet the sustainable development goals. Now, there are several approaches how to do that, but basically what we try to do, we try to bring in the SDGs in as an impact as one of the major components of business decision making. Usually, decisions are made based on two things, right? Revenue and risk. So what we try to do, we try to bring the third component into that. There are several approaches of how to do it in terms of moving from what we call a shareholder value to stakeholder value, moving from a compliance to some sort of values and principles towards targeting an impact as an objective. But all those things, it all requires innovation so that new technologies come to help to reduce the harm or to increase the benefit to the stakeholders, or even to contribute to a systemic solutions towards the sustainable development goals. Now, again, when we speak about the private sector, it's not one universal structure, right? We deal with everything from startups to SMEs to corporates to multinationals to large infrastructural projects, which involve both the government side, public side, and also the private sector. So each of those clusters requires its own approach through which we can bring in that impact and through which we want to promote impact technologies. Again, for the startups, those would be most probably the incubators. For the grown-ups, or what we call a Series A or growth stage companies, those would be the accelerators. We have also the concept of corporate accelerators, which is applicable for the corporate cases, where there's also the overall idea of social entrepreneurship, corporate impact venturing, etc. So for each cluster of the companies, we try to come up with an instrument which would help those companies to come up with solutions, sustainable solutions, solutions which have feasible economic models behind it, not only the technology. And one of those things were the accelerators, which seems to be much very well sort of an effective and well performing within a short term. So what are the impact accelerators? So here, what we basically do, we take the concept of the business accelerator and we add up to that the impact acceleration component. So it's basically convergence between business acceleration and impact acceleration. So here we try to bring in and teach the ventures which are in the accelerator the strategies for the scale up of both business, technology, but also impact. So, and the rest of the components here are probably the same as in many other accelerators in terms of, bringing the visibility, bringing the possible funding sources, mentors, and trying to help those ventures to scale up across borders. So to keep it short, we start piloting the impact accelerators about 4 years ago, and now we have 8 of them operational in the field of I would say, startup or growth stage accelerators. We have also the model of the accelerator, which is for corporates, and we have 3 of them operational as of now, and we are developing another 6. We are launching actually next week a global accelerator on response and recovery related to COVID-19, but also any other pandemic related issues soon. I'll be speaking about that a bit later. Overall, our accelerators are focused on specific impact issues, challenges. It could be climate, it could be circular concept, could be gender, women empowerment, edutech, agri-tech, food tech, fintech, health tech, golf tech. So these are all the thematic issues around which we had already the cohorts of ventures. And since 2017, we work with 150 ventures from 20 countries. An example of an impact accelerator, this is the one which recently sort of the cohort from Indonesia. We had 9 companies which after graduation had quite an amazing results. So basically we had an employment growth for 38% within 10 months, and those 10 months of the 10 months of COVID. We had improvement on gender balance, and 3 companies out of 9 were able to attract investments. So some of them are here. I can elaborate on them a bit more, but this is a sort of a digital platform for job seeking. These guys were providing an interesting government technology to help the municipal government to manage the cities based on the smart cities concept. Another 2 major technologies I want to sort of focus your attention on is the impact fintech and also impact health tech one. So I've seen the previous session on fintech, and people were elaborating on that, and in terms of what that could produce. We think about the fintech from 2 perspectives. One perspective is those sort of solutions which are targeting what we call BOP, vulnerable groups, or bottom of pyramid. So providing, basically addressing the issue of financial inclusivity, but extending it from the inclusivity towards the concept of financial prosperity. So there's a bunch of solutions around it, specifically designed to access those which were either unbanked or underbanked with different sort of solutions. But there is also a cohort of fintech solutions which are not there for BOP, but for the other players, but still very important for achieving the sustainable development goals. So those things relate to, again, business decision making, policy and regulatory aspects related to sustainability, all sort of solutions on tracking, on rating, on impact measurement, indexing, very interesting solutions between which work on big data and convergence of non-finance and finance data, and we actually help a couple of ventures to scale up or design and scale up such technologies as well. The typical one, when we speak about the technologies to explore for impact fintech, those are the usual ones. There is nothing new here in terms of blockchain, big data, mobile money. People were elaborating on that in the previous session. All sort of platforms on e-commerce, crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, etc. We do have a fintech accelerator right now ongoing. It's between UNDP and Copenhagen Fintech Lab, and it's about helping the fintech ventures with interesting solutions to to come to this part of the world, to Asia Pacific, and especially from the perspective of adapting and implementing their solutions for developing countries. Some ventures which we already have supported in fintech. Those are, this is a crowdfunding platform in Indonesia. This is an interesting system for financial management of schools, peer-to-peer lending, peer-to-peer lending, which is basically now scaling up from Indonesia to a couple of other countries in the region. This one is very interesting solution and interesting technology. This is not a startup. This is one of those which came through our corporate acceleration scheme. So these are originally people who are doing trading with commodities, coffee and cacao from Africa. So what their technology basically were able to do after going through acceleration is they are using the satellite data to understand the risk of the specific land lot given specific crop, and based on that data we are forming a financial product, a lending product, which we are offering to the farmer which operates on that land. Very interesting solution on, again, convergence of, again, satellite data, finance data, and data from the markets. The last piece which I want to underline is the current effort that we are undertaking now. It's about response and recovery for COVID-19. Under response, what we basically mean is healthcare related solutions, and those are what we are looking for is the ventures which can provide solutions on the supply chain management specifically for healthcare, health data management, all sort of e-health solutions, and the screening, diagnostics, remote health services, and health workforce capacity building. So all these are very relevant to those markets, those countries where we are now working and trying to bring those recent technologies to help them. We have also a recovery scope. Now, this doesn't, this relates to those sort of technologies which are addressing everything which have been affected through COVID-19. Those are like education, economic aspects, business continuity solutions, e-commerce, education, workforce reprofiling, etc. So we are now undertaking an accelerator. It will be a composite initiative, which will have a pre-accelerator, accelerator, and a VC type of fund. And we are launching next week our pre-accelerator bootcamp. And the overall idea is to work with up to 60 ventures from all over the world. And we are implementing it with Draper University or Draper Ventures out of Silicon Valley. So next week we are launching it, and all those who have technologies welcome to apply to that. Now the last piece, in all those accelerators, when we speak about impact accelerator, the major sort of input from our side is the impact scaling and impact measurement, impact management aspect of that. So we have created a special tool set which allows to do it. And that is actually the main distinguishing factor. And we are doing that based on the concept of SDG impact and SDG context. I won't elaborate on that more, rather leaving some time for questions. But again, there are several other ventures that we have accelerated, which were quite successful in addressing COVID-19 challenges, e-health, distant education, and classroom management, informational solutions, and some sort of things related specifically to health tech technologies. Thank you.
Artak, thank you very much for your presentation. I wanted to congratulate you. That's exciting news about the launch next week for the Impact Venture Accelerators. And there's definitely great potential to be found in this intersection of business and impact projects. So that's exciting. Are there any questions on the floor for Artak? Okay, great. Thank you very much again for your input. And now we're going to transition to our next speaker, Shen Tang, founder and managing partner at Food Future Co., presenting a full spectrum capital for social entrepreneurs. Biology, ecology, culture, and social equity are smarter than technology, as well as investing in wisdom, holistic and inductive. So in this part, Shen is going to present the example of this worldview presented by his own project in regenerative agriculture and food tech, 4P Foods and Vital Farms, as well as present his view on wisdom economy as opposed to knowledge economy. Shen, would you have the floor, please?
Muted.
Yes, you're muted.
Hello, thanks for IDX for organizing this, and it's an honor to be on this distinguished panel with Her Highness and other colleagues who are making the world a better place through all these impact organizations and platforms. A quick words about what Food Future is. We're a accelerator focusing on scale-up stage companies and impact exclusively through the impact lens. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, and we're also an investment platform, multi-stage investment platform. And one of the unique things Food Future have put together is a fairly sizable community with over 500 mentors, with industry veterans and executives from global conglomerates and founders of social impact space, or founding fathers like Ben and Jerry, and celebrity chefs, and even the Pulitzer-winning food journalists from New York Times. I just want to start with a story of two companies. One is a company called 4P Foods. What you see, if you can see the screen clearly, you may recognize one of our customers as Mr. Barack Obama with this bright red shopping bag, and that's what we call our farm share. A farm share is full of fruits and vegetables and frozen meat. All this food is sourced locally. In this case, of course, around the city of Washington D.C. And this is one of our first investment in the local food supply chain, and it directly help the local food economy and disrupting the traditional supply chain. And another story you probably have heard is Vital Farms. What Vital Farm does is this is a company that source healthy eggs, humanely grown chicken and eggs, and pack them in colorful cartons and make it available in grocery shops, grocery stores across America. And it has a fantastic IPO a couple months ago, and so this two companies shows the growth potential and how quickly true, authentic impact visions in the food space can not only inspire and start business model, but to really start to move mainstream into both the consumer and the investment space into the impact sustainable food space. And these are just two stories out of a space where you look at the global food and agriculture market is over $11 trillion. That's the total revenue size for last year. And to give you a comparative sense, the seafood market alone is 400 billion, and that is the size of the entire global software market. So this is not only the largest market, it is the largest market because how not only everyone eats, but it's very important on a daily basis to everyone. That goes without saying. But you look at all this space, the story of 4P and story of Vital Farms, each of those categories will have multiple other breakouts. And here are just 6 other areas where Food Future Co. have built portfolio solutions, whether it's the food waste, local food, the plant-rich diet. And one of the more established areas is also organic food, which has already reached the total size of about 55 billion. But in the next 3 years, even that category will double. Ethnic heritage food, and so on. So what does all of this mean? So if you look at one, just carbon sink as a way of looking at how we can make the world a better place through changing food. So if the goal, as many experts estimate, is to reduce CO2, to sink carbon by 1,000 gigaton, these categories I just talked about together, by doing the right farming, by doing the right nutritional dense food, and all the rest, can take care of 20% of that, can take care of nearly 200 gigatons of that. That's just one way of looking at how food is central to our shared future and to correct the course of a lot of major challenges today. So Food Future Co. looking at this by our whole thesis can be simply put into one approach, which is bringing the right farmers close to the consumer. So this trend is really shifting. There's general trends shifting toward healthy soil, regenerative agriculture, increasing the nutritional value, and lowers the environmental product cost. So regenerative and sustainable agriculture create jobs and increase income in the right communities. And in many cases, these are smallholders, not only in the global south, but in North America as well, everywhere actually. So supply chain innovation and removing middlemen, so-called, provides opportunities and create value. Local food and circular economy, and nutritional density and food medicine, all food as medicine, all lead back into good farming. So I have a few words about the title of the talk, Wisdom Economy. And when I talk about wisdom economy, this is instead of what's been very successful and kind of a dominant approach in the last decades, if not a couple of centuries, is what's known as knowledge economy. The knowledge economy, but this fast development also created a lot of unintended consequences, which we have to solve. So knowledge economy focus on technology, and technology cherishes investment in research and development. But when I think about research development, let's think about Mother Earth, let's think about our society, let's think about our human biology. So nature or ecology, such as biodiversity, healthy soil and water, you can look at it as a result of billions of years R&D. When I look at culture, such as equity in society, such as a culinary tradition, meaning that we make food through prepare and preserve instead of highly processing it. Those are hundreds, if not thousands of years R&D. And reason human biology, the understanding of microbiome, mindfulness, and well-being is also magnetizing the countryside, the country life for affluent population, which is a counter trend of urbanization. So when we call wisdom economy, again, the implementation is really just bringing the right farmer closer to consumer. Is when knowledge economy, science and technology, with dozens of years of, when you think about a really impressive portfolio of IP, there's dozens of years of R&D, when it's not used centrally as a way we relate to the world, but rather to use science and technology to leverage the resilience of nature, of culture, of human biology, then we can do better. We can correct the problems we've been creating, and this is this is not non-scientific. This is actually a inductive way of approaching the world logically, scientific, instead of only deductive way. Or this is a holistic way instead of being deductionist, right? Philosophy aside, I think the stories of 4P and the recent blockbuster IPO of Vital Farms have shown that when wisdom economy helped to correct the problems we're facing across the globe in different communities of technology-centric and technology-only centric knowledge economy, we can do a lot of good. We can do very well by focusing on doing good. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Shen, thank you very much for your valuable insight on how priority imbalances existing in the knowledge economy have contributed to major challenges that we're struggling today. And I also loved your point on the holistic approach and how it relates to food tech and regenerative agriculture, especially since, as it is known, agriculture is the single most responsible sector across the economy for the current global greenhouse emissions. So it's a very important point as well. Do we have any questions on the floor for Shen? Okay, thank you very much, Ben. And with this, we're going to conclude our first subsection and move on to the next subsection dedicated to impact investments, opening with Jean-Philippe de Chevel, a managing partner at IxD Capital Partners, presenting their SDG 500 initiative, a public-private partnership created in order to accelerate funding of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals through strategic alliances, partnerships, and investment. Jean-Philippe, please have the floor if you're ready.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. I'll try to share my screen. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So good afternoon, everyone. And Eva, Katerina, thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate that. I'll be quick. I understand I have about 7 minutes. So I'm the founder and managing partner at Bamboo. I created the company in 2007, and essentially to direct private debt and private equity into emerging and frontier markets in companies that serve low-income people with essential services such as access to finance, access to clean energy, access to education, access to primary healthcare. And prior to doing that, I had started another company called Blue Orchard Finance in 2001 to deploy finance into microfinance companies globally. So you can say I'm let's say an experienced impact investor. It's been 20 years and I'm doing that. And I've done that because first I wanted to make my contribution to this world and make it hopefully a better place to be. But also because I felt, and I still feel, that the magnitude of the problems we're trying to solve called for a private sector intervention and commercial investments to come up with solutions at scale or problems at scale. So since 2007, when I created Bamboo, we've deployed over several hundreds of billions of dollars in private debt and private equity in emerging markets in the field of essential services access for poor people. I believe, as you can see on the next slide, that we have delivered some impact. It's still a drop of water in the ocean of needs, but hopefully that counts and that contributes. And we're mapping, of course, our impacts towards the SDGs right now. But before we even talked about SDGs, we were already building our own impact performance management system and theories of change behind each of the funds we were launching. And at the beginning, we were able to attract, pioneer funds, established institutional investors, Dutch pension funds, US pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, and at the same time in exploratory funds, family offices, high net worth individuals. And we frankly learned by doing over the last 13 years. I think we've generated a lot of impacts and we've done good investments, and then we have also failed in some investments, and we are deriving the lessons from those failures today, and we're building and learning from them. We've become and we've developed expertise, in different sectors, including access to solar energy in off-grid markets. And based on this development of expertise, the World Bank, for example, has selected us to run their electrification programs in islands such as Haiti and Madagascar, and hopefully more in the future. And then 2 years ago, we started opening up actually to other agencies, other actors in the ecosystem, and we're thinking that building partnerships was the way to go, and not just have in-house development capabilities for tiny Bamboo. And we started responding to requests for proposals and won several mandates and tried several partnerships that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. And we also embraced the blended finance approach. I mean, that's the typical approach where you structure a fund with a first loss tranche and the senior tranches, and basically it allows you to combine within one investment vehicle different types of capital and different types of investors and players in the ecosystem. And typically you would have a charity, grant money, governments, foundations, and international organizations investing in the first loss tranches, basically de-risking and catalyzing private sector money coming in the senior tranches. And we believe honestly, it's a very efficient use of public money. Typically, if you invest at risk $1 in the first loss tranche, you would expect a trigger of 3 or 4 additional private sector dollars on the senior tranches. And that's a very efficient way of using public money and grants, in our opinion. And for private investors, that's actually quite an exciting way of joining the crowd of impact investors while de-risking their investment and getting a risk-adjusted market type of financial returns. So over the last 2 years, and I've got a quite long story, very short, we forged 6 partnerships and 6 impact funds. The first one with the International Fund for Agricultural Development, which is a debt fund for smallholder farmers, mostly in Africa, but also Caribbean and Pacific. We also developed an impact investing fund, a debt fund as well, with the United Nations Capital Development Fund to finance early stage SMEs in the least developed countries. We worked a partnership with the international NGO CARE USA and the International Trade Center in Geneva to launch a series of gender justice funds, mixing debt and equity investments in SMEs with the hope of engaging them on gender agenda. And we're starting in Southeast Asia right now. We then, on the basis of our experience and the recognition of the increasing role of technology, we've discussed that a lot today, in the realm of impact investing, we have developed now 3 tech for impact funds. One specifically focused on Africa with an alliance of 30 African states called Smart Africa, and we're going to invest in early stage companies in Africa whose business model is really focused on technology, enabling access to basic services for poor people in remote areas. We'll do the same in Latin America, and with the Stop TB partnership in Geneva, we are structuring a global health tech fund to promote access to healthcare for poor populations in emerging and frontier markets. Now, those 6 funds are just, quite a lot of work over the last 2 years, as you can imagine, but it was not enough for us, and I'll tell you why. When you try to do real impact investing, you are bound to direct your investments to early stage, small scale SMEs. Artac's work is in that regard spectacular, and that allows you to and forces you to do small size tickets, a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 or $2 or $3 million, and this means that the funds that you're structuring inherently are small size, maybe 30, 50, $100 million. And now if you're serious about attracting large institutional investors from the private sector, I mean, those funds are way too small. They do not just simply have the time and the resources to look at tiny investment propositions of $5 or $10 million. Their tickets usually starts at 30, 50, $100 million. So we said, okay, well, guess what? We have 6 funds here, totaling $500 million. How about convincing each of our partners to come together, SDG 17 partnership? And we are together going to represent a $500 million investment opportunity for the private sector. No more excuse. Institutional investors, guys, this is big enough for you. And this is what we've done. Now, SDG, that's SDG 500. And I'm going to show you the slide with the different funds that I just talked about. And maybe the last one on the structure. You see, each of the funds is a blended finance fund, and if you add up the first losses of each of the funds, you total $140 million, right? That's public money. That's money coming today from the EU, from the government of Luxembourg, the government of Switzerland, the government of Norway, and also very interestingly, increasingly now, African governments themselves, and hopefully one day Asian governments themselves. Côte d'Ivoire, for example, just signed an investment in one of the funds in the first loss. And that's because they recognize, and those governments recognize that the use of public money, of putting $1 in such a first loss here triggers, $2.5 to $3 of senior investment money. And what we also try to do is to actually structure the $360 million of senior tranches into a series of opportunities for the private sector to invest in different categories of investments. Can be notes, can be the equity mezzanine, so that even though they're protected by the first losses of the underlying funds, they still get to choose their risk-return profile in the menu of investments we can provide. And typically on the slide that you're seeing, if you take a note, well, basically you're almost remote bankruptcy free. I mean, there's almost virtually no way that you're going to lose money on this senior tranche, because your average collateralization is 80%. And even if you take the B notes, it's 60%. So the level of protection we're providing to institutional investors there is very significant. And our hope is that we can then attract those institutional investors, and that money will then be distributed across different senior tranches of the 6 funds on the line. So why do we believe that this is exciting? Well, first of all, because if you wish, this is an aggregation mechanism for on-the-ground, granular, real impact investment initiatives that we're doing, each of them with a partner, with a UN agency, with an international organization that will care for the impact we're generating, that will help with deal sourcing, will help with monitoring, will help with reporting. But so we're not asking any of our partners, any of the funds to deviate from the mission, which is helping early stage, small scale companies having tremendous impact in emerging markets. But what we're doing is by aggregation, we're making those funds accessible to institutional investors by the aggregation and the structuring of the umbrella we put on top, and allow them to participate in something that is actually really impactful. And when you look at the portfolio of investments that they will be participating in, well, you talk about several hundreds of SMEs disseminated across the 3 continents, Asia, Africa, Latin America, in multiple sectors, in multiple geographies, with different types of asset classes. I mean, in terms of risk diversification, it's as good as it gets. Now, I'll stop here with one additional comment. We really do believe that this SDG 500 structure is a blueprint for what should come in terms of collaboration between public and private sectors, in multiple sectors, in impact investing. And SDG 500 is exciting because it is replicable and because it is scalable in the future. So I'll stop here. Happy to take questions. Thank you, Ekaterina.
Thank you to you. Thank you very much. I couldn't agree more that aggregation, synergy, and quality over quantity is definitely the way to go when we want to achieve real scalable impact. So, are there any questions on the floor for Jean-Philippe of Bamboo Capital? Okay, thank you again. And now we're gonna move on to a final speaker of a final section. Last but not least, Mamadou Toure, founder at Africa 2.0 Foundation, who's going to present Ubuntu philosophy and Ubuntu Tribe project and how it can have greater social impact. Mamadou, whenever you're ready. You're muted. Still muted. We can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I have my head in the clouds. I've been around the whole week, so apologies. Thank you very much. It's been quite an interesting session, and to hear the perspectives and point of views from the speakers today. So without further ado, I'll share my screen, in particular the element on the Ubuntu project and philosophy.
Perfect, we can see it now.
Okay, so I am the founder of investment advisory firm, which is IxD Capital, and also which is ultimately social empowerment through technology. So we Ubuntu basically mention philosophy, and the rationale behind it is to remind us of our humanity. It actually means Ubuntu in Southern Africa. In Lingala, which is Congo, way to address the situation when you look, for instance, right? So we talked about SDG earlier.
I think Mamadou is experiencing some technical issues. We are going to try to resolve it with the organizers in the next couple of minutes. If it doesn't work, unfortunately, I guess we'll have to conclude. Right. In the meantime, yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for coming and sharing your insight again. I'm sure we can all make use of this opportunity to do some networking, connect, find opportunities to mutually accelerate each other's progress towards this shared goal, sustainability and prosperity. Doesn't look like Nomada will be reconnecting. Must be a problem with the connection. Well, we have still 5 minutes left. Maybe now is a good time to have a discussion, or like if there are any questions among speakers, because Eva and I are more or less familiar with each of you as we're preparing for the conference. If there are any questions left for any of the speakers, now is a good time to discuss those. Sorry, my WhatsApp.
It was great. This is Shen. To hear Jean-Philippe and Attack, because we share this is serendipity. Thanks for the organizer that the way we call it full spectrum capital, blended capital, with Jean-Philippe's efforts and of course multi-stage accelerator and collaboration of blended capital for the UNDP. This is the space is exploding, which is great. You know, let's definitely stay in touch afterwards. Oh, I think our other colleagues back.
Yeah, apologies. Those are some of the challenges of connecting from this part of the world.
We're very happy to have you back. So Shen,
yeah, sorry about that. Internet can be let's say playful. Yeah, so thank you very much. I'll try and catch up with the time that I lost with you guys. But ultimately, there are three major problems that we want to address, right? And that are critical for we're talking about SDG for a real action. The first one is financial inclusion, and one in the bank, but out of which 1.1 billion actually do have a mobile phone. The second issue, and it's going to get worse as we progress, is the challenge of the poverty trap. And poverty is not just an issue in emerging markets, right? In the US, which is quite significant, and as you know, 99% of global wealth is held in 1% of in the hand of 1% of the population. And as we look into that, what is critical is that the challenge when it comes to access to basic services like education, healthcare, nutrition that was mentioned earlier. And with the context of COVID-19, we expect a major further challenge in terms of poverty and societal readjustment. So we decided to address the issue. Basically creating a mobile digital social commerce platform that would be powered by digital gold. And it comes from it started from my own personal background. As I was born in Africa, I grew up in Europe, and I also realized that, Africa is considered as poor, and we deal with that we can't use beyond our borders, and that keep on depreciating every year. Yet we have 40% of the gold reserve, 60% of the platinum, and it keeps on going up. So then I was like, okay, how do we address this challenge? So my background, I forgot to mention, I used to be managing director for GE, and I headed investments in telecom technologies for IFC World Bank in Africa for 8 years, and made the first investment in mobile banking 15 years ago. Then I thought, okay, so why don't we digitize those natural resources and use blockchain and AI so that we could basically tokenize the gold. And because gold is accepted everywhere, then you don't need to use your local currency. Then you can pay in digital gold, but also you can save money by buying this digital gold. So what we've done is to make use ethical extraction and responsible mining, where we could source gold from artisanal miners and small-scale mines, so that we could tokenize it, put it in vaults. We have Dubai, we have Switzerland, South Africa, Singapore, and also the US. And then they get people to start transacting from their mobile phone, and they could buy gold from as low as 5 cents to the dollar from their phone. And suddenly, guess what? They have a digital asset that everybody accepts. So we increase the liquidity, but not only that, we also empower people to be more financially autonomous. Why? Gold has gained 500% over the past 20 years, and it has gained 5,000% since 1971, when Nixon decorrelated the dollar from the gold. So basically, you create a whole new economy by putting social commerce. Why social commerce platform? Very simple. People are not so familiar with crypto keys and on Facebook, with WhatsApp and so on. So why don't we create a digital cocoon, which is a virtual economy and virtual platform, where you would create your profile and you would have an embedded digital wallet that would then allow you to transact or save money. But beyond that, another important thing is what we believe is that as much as you do have a well-distributed talent around the world, you don't have a well-distributed access to capital around the world, right? And therefore, we want to address and to tackle equal access to opportunity for regardless of place of birth and your wealth at birth. And how do you do that? By using what everybody uses, which is the mobile phone, and then give access regardless of borders and so on. And where it becomes very interesting is that on top of this social commerce platform that we have, then suddenly you can access education from wherever you are online, right? There are so many that I've met, whether it's in Africa or in other places, Latin America, who wanted to, get tested courses online, but they don't have a credit card, so they're basically stuck, right? So now they could pay with their digital gold, and then access quiet education. Let's think also of COVID, right? In the case of COVID-19, you didn't have enough doctors in many places to treat or diagnose so many patients. Yet, and you could see these cases also who had to get Cuban doctors actually to come, and a lot of interesting to watch. But not everybody can afford to get the doctors to fly in, right? So, but if with telemedicine and health tech, then those people in those countries who don't have access to enough doctor can buy digital and pay for their health with digital asset, which government, as we call it, right? And this is for us a major game changer, situation where the population also can build savings. And this changes lives. If you think of remittance, for instance, right? Just in Africa, I think there's like $80 billion that goes to Africa in form of remittance, and that costs 5 to 10%, and it's prohibitive, right? So now, if you could use those smart contracts program.
I'm sorry for the interjection.
To a center.
Mamadou, sorry
Yep.
for the interjection. You are breaking off again. So maybe you should.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but you're breaking off again. So if you have some concluding words, maybe we should go there before your connection gets too unstable.
I couldn't hear well. Please repeat.
I was just saying
or you
that
can send me a chat.
You're still here.
The one thing I wanted to kind of highlight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just here. But I was saying you're breaking off again, so maybe you should start wrapping it up before we lose you again.
I cannot hear you, unfortunately. I'm afraid I can't hear.
Yeah, I'm just writing through chat to let you know.
Okay, please, yeah. Sorry, I'm not too sure. I cannot hear much, so.
I think there are some technical issues with the connection as well, but I really loved your point about the applicability and scalability of this project in the context of COVID-19. As I'm sure everyone would agree, this is an extremely pressing issue right now. Before this is resolved somehow, I don't think there's much progress in other areas as well. I'm sorry, if anyone could confirm me. Is it just Mamadou that can't hear me, or no one hears me? Just to confirm.
We can hear you.
Oh, we
Okay, good.
can hear you. We can hear you.
So, does anyone have any questions on the floor regarding the specifics of U-Tribe community and philosophy? Okay, so I don't think there are any questions left for this section, and we're actually running out of time quickly. So I'd like to thank you, Mamadou, for your presentation again, and I would like to thank each and every one of our speakers and participants for this section today. Thank you very much to Royal Highness Queen Dayambi. Thank you very much to Artak. Thank you, Shen, Jean-Philippe, and Mamadou. It was lovely meeting you. We'll make sure to stay in touch and collaborate on any future opportunities that might arise along this process. And thanks to Yeva and Digital Week Online organizers as well for facilitating this.